Welcome to a Simple Therapy Podcast. Real conversations, brave stories, and simple, soulful insights for therapists and anyone on a healing journey. I'm Sindee Gozansky, licensed therapist, supervisor, and a fellow human figuring it out too. Around here, we believe healing doesn't have to be complicated, and that leading with your heart still matters. We talk about what it really means to be human in and out of the therapy room. You'll hear from therapists, mental health professionals, and people courageously sharing their personal healing journeys. Because whether you're the therapist or the client, we're all human here. Let's keep it simple and keep showing up. Hello and welcome to another episode of A Simple Therapy Podcast. My name is Sindee Gozansky, your host, and I really welcome you again. If you haven't listened before, thanks so much for tuning in. And here's something that I really know about you. You're interested in development, in growth, whether you're a therapist or somebody who's just interested in becoming a better version of yourself. I'm so glad you're here. And with that, you're really going to enjoy my guest today. I want to introduce you to Lorain Moorehead. Lorain Moorehead, LCSW, is a psychotherapist and clinical supervisor based in Scottsdale, Arizona, with over 16 years of experience in supporting individuals, families, and emerging therapists. She's an EMDR certified consultant, an ASU faculty associate, and the host of the Self Careapist Podcast, which features real talk, clinical tools, and self-care all in under an hour. It's really great. I encourage you to check it out. We'll talk more about that. Her expertise is in perinatal mental health, anxiety, complex trauma, and EMDR. Lorain blends her deep love for continuous learning with a practical, compassionate approach. And she's especially passionate in providing clinical supervision to newly licensed therapists and experienced practitioners to enhance therapeutic work and deepen professional self-care, which is something I am also really passionate about. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Lorain.
Thank you so much, Sindee. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yes, you've accomplished so much, and I want to let everybody know also your website, which is lorainmoorehead.com. If they want to check it out while we're listening, it's really beautiful. It really speaks to so much of what you offer, the depth and the breadth of what you offer, serving high achievers, the whole perinatal postpartum population, heavy connection and services for therapists from consultation, EMDR consultation nationwide, or maybe it's worldwide. I don't even know. You can tell me, to supervision in Arizona and so much more. And you have podcast. So, where should we even start? I'm curious how you got into this field to begin with.
Oh, I love that question. I can think back to being in maybe even going into my junior year of high school, and I read a book, and the title is going to escape me now, but it was about a mental health hospital in Bellevue and just the inner workings of it. And I remember thinking, oh, I need to be in that setting. And so I had thought about going into law or maybe going into psychology. And when I read that book, it kind of melded the two. And so I thought maybe I'll do both. And the further I got into my psychology training, I never deviated. I knew the whole time where I was headed. I had two amazing psychology instructors in high school. And then I was really immersed in it in college. And I luckily had a few psychology classes, even from the first year of college, when you're usually doing all those prereqs, but it kept me grounded in where I was headed. And so I was able to just stay on that path.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting. And I don't ask a lot of people that, but you've kind of done so much in a short amount of time. I mean, 16 years is still a long time, but the amount of experience you've obtained is really something.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think it felt like that too. Just just this desire to keep learning. And so any job I've had has been somewhere in the field. I remember being even a little bit jealous of my friends who had an early job at a store, like a fashion store, or at a restaurant where we could go in and visit them. And meanwhile, I was working in my first volunteering job was in a retirement home where I was running the activities. Like I would help facilitate craft classes and bingo. And from there, I continued to stay in the field. So as a young person, I felt a little bit torn. Like, I want to do something fun. I want to see my friends. I want to be in the mix of things.
Mhm.
But each step that I took always helped to inform the next one. I was doing some involved in a research lab during my undergrad that I started right away as a freshman. Usually you don't get the
Yeah.
inkling to do that until later, but we did research on twin studies. Um, the professor of that lab had done some amazing research and work. Dr. Kathy Lemery, she has done some just incredible research papers on twins and their cortisol levels and the nature versus nurture pieces. And also, when I was an undergrad at ASU, I worked in a child development lab where it was like a preschool, but the parents could go behind a two-way mirror
Yes.
and watch us. And we were really evidence-based in our approaches there. And so even during school, I felt like my occupational or like, the job focus was always there and always just guiding me to be able to get into the next step that I wanted to learn from. So it did feel like it was kind of packed in there, but also really, really fun.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so cool. Like you've come full circle to also being a faculty associate at ASU. How great. I love that. And I think it's important that people hear like you can really get some nitty-gritty experience, especially if you like that, child development model and the research and, seeing your other friends doing retail, but knowing this is kind of your calling and that ongoing continuous learning piece is so important. And something we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, that sometimes is missing a little bit now in the field. And I think
Mm.
probably that's why you and I both have podcasts because I think it's so important. And how do we also promote continuous learning instead of just sitting there and, kind of whether it's using the same interventions or staying in the same, approach. I think the only way we can continue to serve our clients is by learning ourselves.
Oh, yeah, I think that's so right. And I think you're right that we probably will come back to this thesis.
Mhm.
Um, it keeps us grounded in the work and keeps us excited and interested. It's easy to lose that passion without being exposed to new ideas and approaches and the old ideas and approaches from the greats.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So we've had a little introduction, which I love, and we could keep going on that. But let's dive into kind of the theme that we're going to discuss today about sustaining the therapist self. You and I both are passionate about self of therapist, consultation, supervision, managing self-care and burnout, enhancing professional development. And at the same time, we recognize we want to do meaningful work. We want to serve our clients. And sometimes we, you know, overperform, overfunction. We put on the mask of we've got it all together. I can vouch for that I've done that, like putting on that, having it all together. I can manage, I can fake it and, do the one more thing. And that becomes a drain, really starts to drain us in so many ways that can impact, besides ourselves, our clients, our practices, and so much more, our families. So we're talking about today really sustaining the therapist self, which is also our human selves. And what first drew you to like this concept of sustainability and the self-careapist model?
Yeah, I in some ways I think the point came after the name. I think gravitated toward the name. The other piece, though, is that I feel like somehow I've stumbled into doing self-care really well. And so
Hmm.
I sort of had to reverse engineer in order to help my clients get to this. I had to reverse engineer how I got there and how I'm able to do self-care that feels fulfilling.
Hmm.
So I didn't learn it and then do it. I somehow did it and then really had to put language to how I was doing it in order to make it accessible for others.
Amazing. Okay, so you operationalized your self-care. Tell us a little bit about doing self-care really well. Like you realized you had that gift.
hmm
What does it look like for you, Lorraine, when you're doing
Yeah.
self-care well?
So what I've realized is that I think self-care is a very values-driven process.
Mhm.
And I, Brene Brown has some really neat language about that values, becoming oriented to one's values. She has a worksheet of about 100 different values to choose from, which I always think is interesting because I think when a lot of people hear values, they think it's probably 10 words or less. You think of honesty, you think of loyalty, you think of maybe patriotism. And it's any action word really that you can think of. And the more I learn about ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, the more I think that probably lended a lot of the basis for even that research that she pulled from. So I think that by attuning to one's values, you can come up with strategies for self-care that are really suitable for you.
Mhm.
And the way that I look at this is that sometimes we're doing things that don't, like someone might say, oh, I'm going to rest today. And they might watch a few movies or they might binge a season of an interesting show. And in the moment, that might feel like rest. And then in reflection, it didn't really feel restorative. They're going
Mhm.
into the next week feeling maybe anxious, maybe a little um, maybe even overwhelmed by what they watched. And for someone, you or I or someone listening, they might feel like, oh, that sounds like the most restorative weekend I can imagine, which is great because that's exactly what I think happens.
Yeah, right. So you know if it resonates for you or not.
hmm
Yeah. And if it doesn't, but we do it because it's not in that values-based kind of self-care package for us. Instead, it's like a typical message. You really draw this distinction. So how do we figure out like what our values-based self-care thing like tools are?
Yeah, I think one way to do it is reflect back, maybe even take some quick notes about times you felt really in alignment. Like, uh, wow, this one time I came back from a weekend with my oldest friends, and I really felt, even though I was busy, I had a lot to do, I had a lot of catch up. Maybe you felt like, wow, I really felt aligned. I really felt connected. I felt ready to take on the world. And then from there, you can tease apart, well, what did we have in that weekend that could have felt restorative? Maybe it was laughter. Maybe it was, workouts. Maybe you danced until you dropped. Maybe it was some comedy shows or taking in some plays and then really teasing apart from there to be a detective and see, well, what was it? And then continue to do that with a few more times that you felt aligned and see what the common themes could have been. The same works for times that you knew you were really out of alignment
Mhm.
and notice what could have been missing during those times. For me, I gave the TV example, and at some point I looked and said, wow, when I've been really into a season of something, Suits or Gossip Girl or whatever it is, it's fun and I feel so out of whack because that's just not my self-care. It just isn't. And I've been like that since I was a little kid. My
Yeah.
brother, who is an actor, or
Wow.
will say. but you hate TV, but you don't watch
Oh my
TV.
God.
And it's just coming to realize some of those common links, I think is so important.
Hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. And even as you describe that, like reflecting and looking at when you were in alignment, and then, going even deeper for all of the different parts that may have helped you feel really good, feel connected, versus when you're not in alignment. That's a great exercise. Like, for therapists listening, do this with your clients, right? That's like so simple. And the reason I say that is because many therapists, especially younger ones, will say, "Oh, but that's not therapy, Sindee." I'm like, "Oh, yes, it is." Right? It sounds so simple. It almost sounds like you're just having a conversation or asking them about their weekend. And time again, I'm like, that is sometimes where the gold is, sometimes where you can really help somebody understand themselves. And that's often hard to do. We need it for ourselves. We also want to help everybody else have that kind of self-care.
I
Um,
even have a little worksheet that I'll give you to link where someone could walk through it. And I can give you an example
yeah.
of something that on face value you might think, oh, I like to do this, but then you realize, oh, there might be more to it.
That would be great. That would be amazing. Yes, we're gonna link to the worksheet and thank you for that gift for the listeners. Yeah.
Sure. So I hear a lot from athletes, whether that was high school or college,
Hmm.
that they're really missing that piece. You get later in life and time changes. You don't have the same time to dedicate toward a sport, or sometimes it's music
Hmm.
or sometimes it's whatever it is. And I'm going to go with the sports example just because it's top of mind. So people will say, oh, so I try to make sure I work out because I really enjoyed that dedicated time for athletics as a kid.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot, and I wonder if you do too, that it
Mhm.
doesn't quite capture the essence of what was missing. It's fine and it's integral, but it may not be just scratching the itch in the same
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And so sometimes then the person will join, even if it's an intramural kickball league, um, they'll start taking group classes at a workout space instead of going independently to work out. They'll kind of reverse engineer in the same way I was
Yes.
thinking of earlier to try some different methods. And what it might turn out to be in that example is community and
Hmm.
athletics,
Hmm.
goal oriented thinking and athletics, or um, trying to advance your level and whatever it is, you can sometimes tap it by trying a different method. So if you're looking at your little diagrams thinking, okay, sports is a common one, I would challenge to look a little bit deeper and look for that second level or that third level that's coming up. And that could be the difference between going on a trip with friends where you come back and you're frazzled
Hmm.
versus going on a trip with friends and you come back and you feel so fulfilled. It could be those second and third level values that were coming up that you've missed maybe in previous attempts to tap into that self-care need.
Yes. Such a great example. And that community piece might be missing, the competitive piece, and think of any kind of intense discipline or art like you described. All of those things have layers. And the more we can understand, what replenishes us, right? A solo athletic activity may not do it for somebody who was, on the soccer team, on the lacrosse team, all of those
Sure.
things. So, and then as you get older, we think we have to do this. We have to do this to, be in shape or, stay in comparison to whatever else we're seeing. And so you add all of those other messages in that can mess up the self-care in itself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, do does it feel helpful if I talk about like a more relaxing kind of rest too?
Yes, because I think often, we're pushing that away. We feel like we have to have it all together. How can I possibly relax? My self-care should be productive. You can bet I've said that before.
Yeah. Yeah, that little internal dialogue showing
Yes.
up, telling on us. So rest is always going to be important. Even for that population we just talked about that was a competitive athlete. We know we need rest, and I would challenge that even rest can align with some values too. So it might be some repetitive pattern type activities. I think sometimes about like a puzzle or some beadwork, or, someone might feel like that captures for their relaxed mind, that it feels really good to be doing something slow and repetitive. It might not involve screen time. It might not, it might not even involve reading, which might feel more goal oriented than a person likes, but it could be more of a slow and repetitive type of activity. It could be complete stillness, of course, and it could very well be catching up on shows or movies or watching an old favorite. I hear that one a lot too. Like I like the
Mhm.
repetitive activity of rewatching a season where I already know what's happening. There are no surprises, but it feels good to me. So just so I used our competitive athletes first, but I wanted to just touch on the fact that it could be really a nice, slow and restorative values-based activity also.
Yes, yes. And to look at kind of those daily things you do and start reflecting on it, and then you'll end up having kind of more of a menu for your own self-care in a way.
Hmm.
Yeah. And you're also a big proponent of laughter and imperfection as part of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think um, it can be easy for probably a lot of our fellow therapists to become so focused on wanting to do a good job, the best job for ourselves and our clients, that we can get stuck in sort of um, a perfectionistic. I hear that a lot. I wonder if you do too from our colleagues and clients.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And um, that's really hard to shake, because it comes from such a good intention, but then it takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. Well, when you mention perfectionism, and I think about how it's also really closely aligned with high achievement, high performers, people have high expectations, many of these clients you work with, and really looking at this link that you talk about with our trauma as sometimes driving our high performance or over functioning, and then the perfectionism is got to be buried in there somewhere.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. I think that some of those expectations come in early on and they're stored in our nervous system. And for someone who's experienced a thought of one version of the thought might be, if I don't make a mistake, then I can stay out of trouble. If I get attention, it's because it's bad. And so I want to avoid sticking out. Or the only way that I can get positive attention in my life or my family is by performing, being the best. If you're in the middle, no one notices. So the only way to feel that sense of love and connection is to perform. Well, that gets stored and it's really hard to shift. It's
And
not a thought, it feels like the truth.
yeah, and even as you describe that, you can hear like the attachment longing that
Mm,
underlies it. So you really make this link between that trauma or attachment wound or something that we carry with us that then can lead us into this drive, this over functioning.
hmm. Yeah, whatever that initial thought was can really have a way of staying. I was thinking of this example. I use it when I'm writing a lot, but of a young child in student council early on who says, "Oh, I want to be in this committee." And the teacher says, well, I need you to be in this other committee because you're a role model and you need to be in the example. Or you need to be the example to your peers, you know? And just what was the takeaway there? Not that it's bad. I mean, it's a compliment. It's intended to be a compliment, but the child takes away, I can't have fun. I always need to be working, you know? And just to
Right.
see that woven through future, like if I'm having fun, I'm not doing enough. If I'm having fun, I'm not being a role model. My wants and my and what people need from me don't align. And so I need to avoid picking things that are fun or feel light because then I won't be in that role model role or I won't be serving my full aptitude.
Exactly. Such a great example, Lorraine. So for somebody who's, that like really lands for them, right? Like, yeah, actually, I don't pick the fun thing because I always feel like I need to show up, in that role model or, with that, I don't know, like more serious, higher expectations. What what do they do to kind of get out of that or to start having some awareness, because it's also fine to have, healthy ambition and really want, to achieve things and to be driven and be entrepreneurial. And I think many therapists are entrepreneurial because, of the work we do. And often we might start our own private practice and then realize we have a business. And then what are you going to do there? Are you going to expand other types of, you know, income streams that you can provide, right? And so therapists have so much opportunity to be entrepreneurs, to be driven. So we come by that, but then how do we know when, we're not making that differentiation of finding things that also fulfill us in a fun, light, like like almost satisfying in a more like essential way sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I also have to say I think you have such a way with words. Um, so I it really is sort of a teasing apart. I mean, I'll give two perspectives. Of course, I think there can be some work to be done to separate that self from achievement, you know, and I think there are a lot of
Right.
modalities of therapy that can assist with that. Personally, I use EMDR a lot with
Mhm.
that, and I'm getting into IFS now, and I think that they really do a really neat idea, a really neat job of addressing with the protective parts and the managers because those are some very manager roles that are coming on board for
100%. Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't want to minimize that there's some great, fruitful, amazing work to be done in that area.
Mhm.
The other piece that I'm going to mention, though, is that I think you make a great point that it's not all bad, and some of it feels good, and some of it's even fun, you know? And I think really separating what am I doing out of duty? And is there any way to pull back from that versus what do I actually enjoy? Like when I'm up late tinkering and toiling and working on something and it's fun and I feel good, or when I'm submitting to something and it gets chosen, or it just feels so good to be trying. And if that feels good and that's feels like play in some ways, I think that's okay and it's good to know.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then there are some pieces where it's like, I hate this. I'm planning just for the sake of planning, and I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, and I don't feel good after, I don't feel good during,
mhm.
and I sure as heck don't feel good at the beginning. I think that's important to know too. And sometimes we'll have piece elements of that we have to do. That's some to some degree, that's adulthood, right? But I think it's nice to know so you at least know whether you need some kind of restorative balance
Mhm.
after you do something like that, or whether that actually was really good and fun and felt nice.
Yes. So great. And really, you help us there by bringing that energy, like, I mean, when it's fun and good, you're into it, you're smiling, you're just like, you're going for it. You're not really, you're in flow. You don't necessarily see the
Yeah.
time, right? All of those things. And what you're kind of really delineating is that fun kind of life-giving feeling versus what many of us are very familiar with for ourselves and for our clients, that survival feeling. I've got to do this. And yes, there are those adulting things we have to do. But when you really start feeling like that survival, and I bet everybody listening can see it in their clients far faster than we see it in ourselves.
Yeah, it tends to happen that way, doesn't it?
Today's episode is brought to you by Berries, the HIPAA compliant note taking platform that makes your therapy documentation effortless. I am using Berries now with my group practice, and it is amazing. Berries says goodbye to the burden of mental health notes using automated note creation. You simply record your notes or record your session, and the platform instantly transforms them into a fully customizable format. Plus, your recordings are not stored, ensuring complete privacy. Berries is personalized, affordable, and comes with an extremely generous trial period. And for listeners of this podcast, use the code Sindee50, that's SINDEE50, for $50 off your first month. With Berries, you can reclaim your time and focus on what matters most, your clients, not your notes. It's truly made me enjoy being a therapist again. I encourage you to check out the link in the show notes for Berries. Use my discount code Sindee50 and get started today. Did you know 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health issue this year? That's why I created Mental Health Threads, to spread awareness and break the stigma around mental health. At mentalhealththreads.etsy.com, you'll find a collection of inspiring and fun products, from t-shirts and hoodies to mugs, hats, candles, and more, all featuring positive messages that encourage self-care and mental well-being. Best sellers like Go to Therapy, Love Wins, and Still Here are fan favorites, along with our signature semicolon designs and Pride collection. Therapists especially love our exclusive items like Licensed Listener and Professional Secret Keeper. Our mission is to spark important conversations and remind you that you are not alone. If you're ready to make a statement and support mental health, head on over to mentalhealththreads.etsy.com today. Let's make mental health a priority together.
And I guess some of the things you might be looking for in our clients or ourselves would be just the overwhelm. I mean, if we're maybe even adding things just to add them, and they can be pulled away, if there are things that feel, even relationally, feel like I'm doing this, this is my role, and it frustrates me, I feel resentful, it makes me mad when I have to do it. Sometimes those are some of the questions. These duties show up relationally often too.
Yeah, and thanks for saying it that way, Lorain. Like, just really giving it those words, right? When you feel resentful, when you feel mad, like, and it's okay to admit that. I think a lot of times, again, this goes to kind of that professional persona that we feel, especially as therapists, well, we can't even go there, right? Like, we have to, always be a certain way, and things will make us mad and resentful, and that's okay.
Hmm. Yeah. And then kind of knowing if I am feeling like I do this out of an expectation for a certain result, or if I do it so frequently and I end up feeling resentful every time, is there another way to manage it? What would happen if I didn't do it at all? Would the friendship suffer? Would I be in a worse position in
Hmm.
socially than I am now? How to really look at that as an opportunity to change or take away.
Yes. And I hear your compassion really just coming through as you say that, for anybody listening. And when you're trying to find your own therapist, listen to what resonates for you. Lorain, you have this compassion, but also like really grounded, down to earth way about you. And I'm sure that's so supportive and affirming for your clients. And then also for the clinicians you work with. And I'd love to talk about that.
Mm.
Supervision is something you offer for therapists, I don't know in your state if they're associates, like they still need the supervision while they're getting their full license, also experienced therapists, and it's a big part of your thing. So tell me about your interest in supervision and why it's so important.
Oh, yeah. So I am in Arizona, and I think we have some different options maybe than some other states. So I don't know how much we want to get in the weeds, but in
That's okay.
Arizona, you're allowed to be an off-site clinical supervisor. So I'm an LCSW, and if someone um, needs LCSW hours and their agency doesn't have one on site, then they can seek out external supervision. So I do some of that. I work as a supervisor in an agency setting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and with a couple of private practices around the valley. And I think good supervision and I do consultations for EMDR and for licensed professionals as well that want to work on some business development types of things or want to hone in on their skills and some of those pieces also, which I really, really love.
Yeah.
I think my passion for supervision came from coming up through the old path through a community behavioral health agency and just wishing and longing for more in-depth training. Sometimes
Yes.
now I'll get the chance to talk to clinicians who, in their practicums, were able to study under some of the greats in our field.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, to just start out with that really
Mhm.
solid clinical foundation. I mean, DBT in a Linehan trained
Right.
program or ACT through like being trained with the founder of and developer of ACT.
Yeah.
And so just thinking like, wow, to start out with a really great solid foundation and to get some advanced learning all the way through. I love that concept. And I think that's really driven me to keep thinking about the most in-depth ways to give some of that information, along with the ethical support that we know we're also responsible for to people that are coming up through the ranks.
Yes, exactly. And that ethical support and gatekeeping is a big part of it. And then there's also that ongoing development and expansion. And I share your experience, from many, many years ago, starting in community mental health, having a supervisor or supervisors at the agency, but then also, you know, going outside of that and paying for my own supervisors because I still wanted more and needed more. And I think that's something you don't see as much now. I wish there could be more of that. I think maybe some peer supervision is happening a bit more, and people kind of getting with consultants or finding a mentor is really, really important. So I agree that it helps you to have like other perspectives and also to really figure out where you want to go, who you want to be. And then it can change. Maybe you're into this one thing and then it shifts, you get a different supervisor. How great is that?
Hmm. Yeah, that ability to choose that you mentioned, it's so neat to hear you say that you did that. I didn't really see that as an option, or I didn't know that was available to me
Yeah.
20 years ago, but I think it's so neat that people did that. And like you, I hope they still do, or I hope they have access to the information and the opportunities that they need, because I think there's so many different offerings available to us that you just wouldn't know about if your graduate school or your practicum wasn't steeped in those opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And, I also think it's worth that expense to you because it's supporting your career. And sure, a lot of newer therapists, have a lot of expenses and paying back loans. And, sometimes the graduate programs do a disservice and just say, okay, then, you launch and you go and you do this and XYZ, and then you get your full license. You get your full license. Often people stop supervision then, which I don't think is a good idea. And another reason that you also continue to provide supervision that goes beyond, right? It's reflective. It's not just about like, meeting certain regulations. Um, I guess I'd wonder when you think about your approach to supervision, like how would you describe it? Or what do you find, maybe this is a better question. What do you find people come to you really wanting in their supervision with you, in their supervisory relationship?
So I follow the Proctor's model of supervision, which is formative, restorative, and normative.
Mhm.
And I think that formative piece is so important with um, I stay on top of the research. I'm engaged in a lot of different conversations and a lot of different journeys. And I think that people are happy that I can, if I don't know it, I can help point them in the right direction on the right learning path for them. I try to gather a lot of information about different approaches, and I'll be pretty open if I think that there's something else that might be better for where they are. So th certain modalities I really like to see, or I like to encourage people to bring on board a little bit later after they start with a more with a theory or modality that can help them really just be in the room with their client.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think I love like I will go down a training rabbit hole like nobody's business, but I think some of it is just being comfortable being sitting with pain, sitting with trauma, just understanding and sending the message to a person that you're there and you can hold what they've shared. And I think sometimes getting in the into a script or getting too far into a modality where you haven't had a real chance to really do that can be a disservice.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And it's really helpful for therapists listening, especially newer therapists, to know like that's doing trauma work, being able to just sit with that pain and hold it. You don't have to start off as an EMDR therapist or as a somatic experiencing therapist or whatever, right? We need to be able to start with this, foundational formative work that we do human to human. Really big fan of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Creating that safety and knowing what feels safe to do in the office versus safe to ask your client to do at home. Some of
Yeah.
those pieces are what I might see missed if we get too immersed in different modalities too early and miss that really um, exploratory work of just being with a client. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think you summarized that really well.
Yeah. And I guess, what do you think, like, what do you wish more therapists knew, just about supervision, whether it's seeking supervision or a type of supervision that maybe once they're already licensed may be more beneficial for them? Do you sort of have a philosophy like that on supervision and what you wish other therapists kind of knew about it?
Yeah. Oh, one of my big passions for supervision, and it's one that I regret that I have sometimes because it takes so long, but I think videos
Oh my
is
goodness. You
just, yeah,
speaking to my heart. And
I can tell you agree. Yeah, tell
yeah.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's not only is it deliberate practice, and I tell my supervisees all the time, this is not to criticize you. This is to look at, this is so fun. So fun for me. Is it so fun for you, Lorraine, when you're like watching a video? Because you can see like so many different choice points, so, a range of places that you could go or turn. Nothing they did is wrong, so to speak. It's just how else can we get creative here? How else could you look at it? And you can see my energy. I think it's really important. Very few people want to do it, and that's
Yeah.
something we need to work on.
Yeah. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I did want to do it, and at the same time, I didn't want to do it because I would look back and be like, "Oh, why did I look like that the whole time? Was my hair?" It's like it's so easy to focus on yourself, but that's not the process at all when you're watching it. And I agree. You got me excited by mentioning this one piece where you can get to a point, and then sometimes it depends on the layout of the supervision session or what it's intended for, but sometimes I'll pause it and say, what were you like? What happened here? What did you? And they'll say, oh, I wanted to get this information or I wanted to really lean into that. And then, like you said, we can explore together. It's fun for both of us. How else could we have? Did that land? Did you get the information that you wanted?
Mhm.
did you convey or use the skill that you hoped to? No, I felt like it didn't quite land. Okay, how else could we have done that? And it's a way to really explore that just can't be captured in the same way by a self-report because I do this with podcasts sometimes too. I don't know
Mhm.
if you can relate to that, but
Mhm.
I'll watch it back as I'm editing and I'll think, oh, I really would have liked to go on what they said here. And I was two steps ahead trying to go this way. I really would have loved
Yes.
to just dial in with what she
Yeah.
mentioned there. I wanted to hear more about that. And I wouldn't know it without that video. And you can catch it yourself in the rewatch. That happens sometimes too, where they said, oh, I would have really liked to use this here or ask this or just sit with that. What they said, that was a huge share. Um, and so I think I don't think there's anything like it.
Yeah, that's such great examples. I feel the same way also in podcasts, and I know I will with this one too, because we could have gone in so many directions. And also, like when you're excited or when I'm excited about something, right? We can go deeper there. It's the same thing watching a tape with a client, right? What Oh, we are also watching the clients, not just the counselor or the therapist. Oh, did you see that shift? Did you just see what they did? And stopping the tape, like you said, to say, what were you thinking of then? Also, what were you in touch with yourself? What was happening for you? I'm a
Yeah.
big, self-love therapist. Let's like bring things, emotions into the room. What was happening for the therapist when the client did that?
Mm.
And that also helps the therapist really understand kind of their own system while they're working with somebody. You just can't get that in reporting or talking about a case. So I hope people listening see that we're doing this like from our hearts because it's so fun. It's the way to learn and grow. And, I just encourage you to try it. Or you can contact either Lorain or myself and we'll do it with you and we'll show you like there's no criticism. We're here in it. I have had therapists, it's no different than having somebody shadow you. Somebody wants to learn couples counseling, so I'll say, okay, if I get the permission of the couple, they might also come on, right? Does that put pressure on me? Absolutely. But also, I know this is the best way for them to learn. And what do we do after? We unpack it. And I stay with the therapist and I say, you know what happened when this? I really should have done this and I didn't. Imagine that. So it's the same process.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It gives such an experience. Um, the other thing I've been trying to get into is because I have interns now.
Oh,
And so,
cool.
yeah. And so I've been trying to get into having them if they're learning a bit of psychoeducation or they're learning something new they want to explain of them just saying it to the camera as if they would say it to their client so they
Mm,
can get that muscle memory around using the language, seeing where because teaching is the best way to study and the best way to learn. There's so much neat research around that. And so getting that um, confidence of them being able to learn to teach it or explain it um, with that support while before
right.
they feel like they want to try it with their client.
That's great. I love that. Yes. Um, I also take on master's level interns. So that's another thing we have in common. And, we do it because we love the field. We want to, promote great therapists out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so neat. It
Yeah.
all seems to go hand in hand. Do
Yeah.
they listen to your podcast?
It depends. I think some do, some don't, again, I think it's also sometimes narrower interests in grad school and immediately upon graduation and thinking, I'm just going to go into EMDR or, I mean, no shade there, but, I'm just going to go do this thing or I only, want to work with X community. And so I think that's part of it, which I get.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I think sometimes it's neat to have that as another resource for someone to really hear from the horse's mouth,
Yeah.
what an area could be like. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's sort of like a widening and a narrowing at different stages of the career where
There
you're
is.
narrow in and you're really passionate about one area of work, and then maybe you widen while you explore interests and values, and then maybe you narrow, and maybe that happens throughout the span of a career in this field.
Right, right. Going into the developmental model. And it makes sense for it to be a little narrower, upon graduation because you want to get out there. You want to be, good at what you do, good at one thing. That's great. I absolutely support that. And to answer your question, Lorraine, probably I give people more episodes of other podcasts for them to listen to because I'm always listening. I'm like, oh, this is a great episode on this. This is a great episode on that. Um, and so
Yeah,
let's talk about your podcast, which has the most amazing name, the Self Careapist Podcast. Tell
thank
everyone a
you.
little about that.
Yeah, so the the idea came to be in about 2018. And I just found my initial idea format, and I was calling it at the time. I just found this, so I want to share about it. But at first, I was calling it Provoking Thoughts,
Uh-huh.
and it hadn't zeroed in to be a strictly for clinicians at that time, which it has sort of evolved to be mostly a therapy or psychology audience. And um, the goal was just to capture this feeling that I feel I have right now of just getting to talk and hear from someone else in the field who either gets it or can explain a completely different
Mhm.
uh, cross section of people and modalities that I wasn't aware of. I think some of it came about just as a desire to capture like what would happen at a conference if we were just kind of chit-chatting in between presenters, how you'd get to hear about something that you didn't know anything about. And I think when we're to go back to that narrowing, when we're in
Mhm.
that, we have a lot of like-minded, um, hopefully very supportive and lovely, like I have always had people around us, and what it can be like to experience someone else's very different experience and perspective within the same field. And so after a couple of conversations like that earlier in the year, I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. I want to get to talk to colleagues and authors and researchers and just hear about their snapshot of what they know from their perspective because I love that feeling.
Yeah, yeah. That's so great. I love how it's evolved for you and it's clearly aligned, right? Like all the tells are there. You smile, it's aligned, your posture, your confidence. Um, and that's so great. It's such a resource. It educates us and it makes it real. We do have these conversations, and I think the more we can have them and feel even a little connected, I feel connected talking with you. We don't know each other, but in a field where we're often isolated or we don't know who we can trust, even among peers, and supervisors and so on, this really gives that fresh air. And then people listening feel it too. How great is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a neat um to be able to share some of that connection and just share our takeaways
Mhm.
with others who are interested in the same topic or not even necessarily interested, but more curious. I think that's so neat.
Yeah.
So I was saying earlier that based on the name, the Self Careapist, it's given me an avenue to check in with everybody that comes on about what they do for self-care, what um, they have encouraged clients to do, what their modality of choice that they are talking about says about self-care or has them
Ooh,
integrating. And
I
so
love.
it's been kind of a neat opportunity to get some snapshots from different people.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I see a book in your future, and I'm not just saying that has, right? Again, you're sort of like operationalizing this after you're doing it. It's so cool. I love that idea about the modalities and what self-care offers and asking us, right? We're only as good as our self-care and our own support. So it's really important. Um, with that, like kind of wrapping up for a therapist listening, what's a message you wish every therapist could hear about caring for themselves? Just like a simple message you'd want them to know.
I think there's a lot of pressure in our field. And of course, we've learned about burnout. And I think that self of therapist that you mentioned is so important. And just being aware of how we can interpret the signs of burnout, you know, and how we can do some restorative things in our schedules, in our work weeks, and outside of work altogether that could potentially offer a more restorative experience. So I think the opportunity to just examine what you're doing through a lens of hope and curiosity
Mm.
to find additional opportunities that might land even better for your system can be so powerful. And I think a lot of us might think that we're doing exactly what the doctor ordered. I do this, I do that, I do this. And I just want to invite the curiosity that what if there's a way to tweak it so it resonates with your system even more?
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that and sharing that with us. I really acknowledge you, Lorraine, for all you're doing and putting out there in the world for therapists, for non-therapists, for entrepreneurs. You have so much to offer on so many levels. Um, Thank you for coming here and sharing today. It's been great to meet you. Please tell everyone where they can find out more about you and some of the different offers you have, and we'll be sure to link to it all as well in the show notes.
Okay. You can head to my website, Lorain Moorehead, / podcast, and that'll give you all the links to the podcast. It's the Self Careapist Therapist Podcast on all of probably all the same platforms you can find this one on. And I will set up a page that will be Lorain Moorehead / self-care. So you can find that self-care document that we talked about and a little download from our conversation in this episode. And yeah, I'm on all the major social medias too at the Self Careapist. So you can find me there as well.
Oh, such great branding, the Self Careapist, and also go to her website if you're interested in EMDR consultation or business mentoring, or if you're in Arizona, for sure, supervision. So, yes, wonderful. Thank you for helping us all be a little gentler with ourselves and hopefully giving us a way to discover more of what works for our own self-care. So
Yeah.
grateful, Lorraine.
Thank you so much, Sindee. It was really neat to get to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone listening. And until next time, remember, keep it simple and keep showing up. Thanks for listening to a Simple Therapy podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs it. Your support means so much. You can learn more or get in touch at asimpletherapypodcast.com. And remember, let's keep it simple and keep showing up.